Creating a new word is easy enough that a sufficiently well-known figure can coin new vocabulary pretty quickly. Cartoonist Gary Larson coined thagomizer in jest. Shakespeare and Milton created like half the words in the English language, and the internet coined Rickrolling to describe the act of tricking people to watch Rick Astley's hit song Never Gonna Give You Up. Becoming a word is easy, but much to the dismay of Skyle, becoming grammar is much, much harder. Mind you, it's not impossible. Prescriptivist butt potatoes have been halting the negation cycle since the 17th century, but it's easier to make a new word than to change grammar. Enter McDonald's, a mega-corporation with a valuation that could end American homelessness and enough restaurants to cover all of Liechtenstein. When they're not busy exploiting sweatshop labor to make their toys and not fixing the ice cream machine, McDonald's is casually changing the face of English grammar. How, you may ask? Marketing. Now, unless you've been living under a rock, you've probably heard the slogan, "I'm loving it." Notice anything funky about the wording? It depends on how you read it. Linguists distinguish between two different approaches, descriptivism and prescriptivism. A prescriptivist describes how grammar should be used. Synonyms include grammar police, grammar pedant, Mrs. Smith from 8th grade English class, or simply asshole. A descriptivist describes how grammar is actively used. Instead of scolding someone for using double negatives, a descriptivist annoys them with a slew of questions about usage or dialectal variation. Depending on your view of grammar, you'll see the McDonald's slogan differently. If you're a prescriptivist with a giant red pen up where the sun don't shine, you'd say it should be "I love it," not "I'm loving it." That's because the verb to love is stative, like to like, to know, and to equal. It describes a condition that's either true or not true. You say, "I like it," or "I know it," or "it equals 5." Not, "I'm liking it," or "I'm knowing it," or "it's equaling 5." And the same goes for to love. That's the prescriptivist argument, at least. If you're a descriptivist, you'll note that the verb to love is being inflected with the present progressive tense, or to be verbing. In other words, the love is ongoing and has not been completed. It expresses a different meaning than "I love it," and it loses some of that stative lexical aspect in exchange. All credible linguists are descriptivists, not prescriptivists. We observe language in the wild without poking it with a stick in the butt. This approach gives us a much more complete view of how language actually behaves. What McDonald's reveals is a loss of lexical aspect in the English language, and we'd only really be able to see that through a descriptivist approach. See, prescriptivists aren't all wrong, since older dialect of American English didn't allow stative verbs to take progressive inflection. However, that doesn't mean that the word loving didn't exist. It's been used as an adjective, as in loving embrace, since the 14th century. Loving was also a verbal noun, meaning either the act of feeling friendship or the act of making love. The distinction largely left to context. Note that these two verbal nouns come from two polysemes for love. To love a friend is a stative verb. To love someone is an action with a direct object, which the action can very much be progressive. So by the time McDonald's coined "I'm loving it," there was already some flexibility. People were using the progressive form of love a little more frequently, but it was abnormal enough that the purposeful grammar mistake caught people's attention. But here's the interesting part. Most people born after this McDonald's slogan took off don't really see anything wrong with "I'm loving it." I, for one, use the progressive form of stative verbs frequently without flinching. As a baby, I and other language learners took in surrounding information, processed it, and invented a grammar in my head that made sense of that information as simply and economically as possible. Thus, by popularizing progressive forms of stative verbs, McDonald's essentially murdered English lexical aspect. Take that one.